to have you here. ACT Southwest Ohio wants to thank Pastor Church for his incredible help to make this tour for Brigitte, Ohio happen. We also want to thank Pastors Carol and Tim Sheets for providing this wonderful venue. We so appreciate their facilitating. I personally want to thank Dan Hamada, who's been a mentor and a leader for me to increase my awareness of how to be a better leader. He's helped us so much in putting this together. And also to our new leader in Columbus, Ohio, Catherine Rose. We're so glad to have her here, and now we have a chapter in Columbus, so there's 3 chapters for you all to get involved in. I also want to thank all of the many volunteers in our ACT Southwest Ohio group that have been so kind to come up here and be so diligent and help us all so much to put this program together. For those of you who live in the area and would like to take action and learn more about what's happening with ACT for America, we have a chapter in Cincinnati, and we meet once a month. And if you would like to know more about it, we have a registration table out in the lobby, and afterwards you're welcome to come up and sign up with your emails, and we'll tell you about our meetings and what action can be taken. Will be given in those emails that we send out. They're very interesting meetings, and I'm sure you would enjoy them. Brigitte Gabriel is one of the leading terrorist experts in the world, providing information and analysis on the rise of global terrorism. She lectures nationally and internationally about terrorism and current affairs. Brigitte's expertise is sought after by the world and business leaders. She has addressed the Australian Prime Minister, members of the British Parliament, House of Commons, members of the United States Congress, the Pentagon, the Joint Forces Staff College, the U.S. Special Operations Command, and the U.S. Asymmetric Warfare Group, the FBI, and many others. Ms. Brigitte is a regular guest analysis on Fox News Channel, CNN, MSNBC, and various radio stations daily across America. Ms. Gabriel is the founder and president and CEO of ACT for America, the largest grassroots citizen network dedicated to preserving national security and combating radical Islam. She's the author of 2 New York Times bestsellers, Because They Hate, A Savior of the Islamic Terror Warns America, and They Must Be Stopped, Why We Must Defeat Radical Islam and How We Can Do It. She speaks English, French, Hebrew, and Arabic. If you would all stand, please, and give Brigitte Gabriel a warm Southwest Ohio welcome. We have to give a very special thanks to Dan. Dan, stand up. He is the reason I worked so hard that I'm here today. We have amazing chapter leaders that I will talk about a little bit later in my presentation. But I just want you to know that traveling this amazing country of ours is truly what gives me the energy to keep doing what I am doing. When I come here and I meet people like you, people always ask me, don't you get depressed talking about radical Islam and terrorism? What a dark subject. And I say, of course I do. I'm just like you. But what keeps me so energized and so passionate to continue on pushing on is when I travel the country and meet amazing patriots like you who take the time out of their very busy schedule, because I know you can be doing another million things tonight, yet you chose
to come here this evening and spend it with me because you care about our country and you love our country and you want to know what we can do to protect and preserve our country. You are truly the wind beneath my wings, and you honor me with your presence, and I'm so grateful for you for being here tonight. The national security issue is an American issue. It's not a Republican issue, it's not a Democratic issue, it's not a Libertarian issue. It's an American issue. America has been attacked under different administrations by radical Islam back decades. America was attacked the first time in 1979 under the Carter administration, a Democrat, with the hostages in Iran. America was attacked again under Ronald Reagan administration, a Republican, with the blowing of the Marines in Lebanon in 1983. America was attacked again under George Bush Sr. administration. America was attacked again under the Clinton administration, a Democrat. It was actually under President Clinton that the World Trade Center was attacked the first time in 1993. It was also under President Clinton that the Taliban trained 10,000 Al-Qaeda members in Afghanistan. Now, these people were not being trained for entertainment. They were being trained to attack the United States of America. At that time, George Bush Jr. and Dick Cheney were not even a blurb on the political American landscape. And of course, America was attacked again under George Bush. And people thought, if we just get rid of George Bush and elect President Obama, all our sins are going to be forgiven. The Islamic world is going to forgive our sins and the whole world is going to sing Kumbaya. Obviously, that did not happen. Because 2 days after President Obama became president, Al-Qaeda issued a press release saying, we continue our jihad against the United States, regardless who lives in the White House. And in the first 4 years of President Obama's presidency, we have arrested on American soil 226 homegrown terrorists. 186 of them were Muslims. Now, we have a problem in our country when a faith-based group that accounts for less than 2% of the American population is responsible for over 80% of terrorist attacks and plots against America. Now, that is a problem, and this is fact. This is not fiction. This is not opinion. Those numbers are facts. And that's even before ISIS. That's only in the first 4 years of his presidency. The numbers right now are through the roof. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about the national security issue. People ask me, where does this passion come from? So for those of you who are not familiar with my background and what shaped me to be as passionate as I am on national security, because a lot of you see me on television and may know me because you've watched an interview with me on the internet or watched something of me on television. But many of you do not know my background. So allow me to share a 5-minute about my background with you. You see, I was born and raised in Lebanon, what used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. We were open-minded, we were fair, we were tolerant, we were majority Christians, we focused on education, we focused on commerce and growing our country. We had open border policy, we welcomed everybody into our country because we wanted to share with them the westernization which we had created in the heart of the Middle East. Muslims used to send their children to study in our country because we had built the best universities. They graduated and worked in our economy because we have built the best economy in the Middle East, even though we did not have any oil. Beirut was Paris of the Middle East, the Switzerland of the Middle East. Actually, National Geographic magazine in 1965 had on its front cover, Lebanon, Eden of the Middle East. A lot of things have changed since then. As the Muslims became the majority, and we became the minority, things began changing. By 1975, an all-out war started in Lebanon. because of the influx of the Palestinians that we took out of Jordan as refugees, and we brought them into our country and set up refugee camps for them. As a matter of fact, Lebanon was the only country to accept the third wave of Palestinian refugees into the country. You would have thought we would have learned our lesson from the first shipment that we got, but we didn't. Once they became the majority, they started killing the Christians. What started the all-out Lebanese war was an attack on a church, on worshippers in the Christian section of Beirut, where radical Muslim Palestinians walked into a church and started shooting at Christians. 100 injured and 4 dead during a Sunday morning church service. That began the war that changed my life. My 9/11 happened to me in 1975, when radical Islamists blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble wounded as they shouted Allahu Akbar. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs in both arms, going from one surgery to another, I would ask my father, why did they do this to us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels and they want to kill us. So I learned since I was a 10-year-old little girl that I am wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith and lived in a Christian town. I ended up leaving the hospital and coming back home, but my home was no longer the home I left. I ended up living in a bomb shelter underground in an 8x10 room without electricity, without water, and very little food. To get some food, we would crawl out under the bombs, and we would pick out dandelions and different vegetation that grew around our bomb shelter, because it was the only greenery, the only salads we had to eat. To get some water, we would crawl in a ditch under snipers' bullets to a nearby spring. And every time before we left our bomb shelter, we would say our last goodbyes just to get a drink of water, because we did not know if we're going to come back alive or dead. This became my existence. I remember at the age of 13 years old, dressing, one of our friends stopped by and he said, Brigitte, I just want you to know that we heard a lot of chatter on the radios, and we heard that we're going to be attacked tonight. He said, and if we get attacked tonight, I don't think we're going to last. And if I don't see you tomorrow, I wish you a merciful death. And I remember at the age of 13 years old, putting on my Sunday best, my Easter dress, because I wanted to look pretty when I am dead, knowing that when they come to slaughter me, there would be no one to bury me. And I remember sobbing, begging my mother, I don't want to die, please, I don't want to die, I'm only 13 years old, please. And there was nothing my mother could say to me. And we stood there as she combed my long black hair and tied a white ribbon in my hair that matched the white daisies in my blue dress. And there was nothing she could say. And we sat in the corner of our bomb shelter, and my daddy started reading from Psalms. I shall walk into the valley of evil and fear no evil, for thou art with me. I shall walk into the valley of death and fear no evil. And my parents said to me, when they come to slaughter us tonight, we'll create a distraction. You just run towards Israel, run towards the Israeli border, and don't look back. You see, we lived 5 kilometers from the Israeli border. And we knew if we go to the Jews and beg the Jews for help, the Jews are not going to slaughter us, because we had more shared values with them than we had with the Muslims. Thank God I did not have to make that difficult decision that night. Because that's the night when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and pushed away the Palestinians and the Islamists away from our town and set up artillery bases around our town to stop them from getting to us so they cannot slaughter us. And we went on living like this another 5 years until 1982, when Israel entered Lebanon, working with the Christians, trying to help the Christians take back their country and expel the radical Islamic element that had taken control of the heart of the country at that time. Because by 1982, we had 11 Islamic organizations operating out of Lebanon. So we went from 1965 being named by National Geographic magazine as Eden of the Middle East, to 1982 having 11 Islamic terrorist organizations operating out of Lebanon. And all the massacres. That's how we came out of the bomb shelter and back to rebuilding our lives. By the time the war, at least in our region, ended, I had lived in that bomb shelter for 7 years of my life, robbed of my youth from the age of 10 till the age of 17. I ended up moving to Israel and working as news anchor for World News in the Middle East in 1984. And reporting on world events, because in the 80s, I worked from 1984 till 1989. And that's when we started seeing a rise of Islamic terrorism across the globe. And I started realizing that no matter where the terrorist activity took place, no matter what continent, the name of the perpetrators were always Muslims. Ahmed, Muhammad, Hussein, Ali. The name of the victims were always Westerners, Christians and Jews. Terry Wade, Terry Anderson, Colonel Higgins, the Achille Lauro, the TWA flights, the Pan Am flights, and I can go on and on. As a matter of fact, in my first book, titled Because They Hate, I list pages upon pages of all the terrorist attacks that the Islamists perpetrated around the world, where America hit the snooze button and went back to sleep. And I started realizing that what I used to think was a regional problem between a majority Muslim Middle East trying to either kill or expel the minority Christians and Jews had become a worldwide problem. But the world was not connecting the dots. The world lacked imagination. And isn't this exactly what the 9/11 Commission report said to us? We lacked imagination. It's not that we did not know that Al-Qaeda wants to attack the United States of America. After all, they attacked us the first time in 1993 with the bombings of the World Trade Center. They attacked us in 1995 with Kubar Towers. They attacked our embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1997. They attacked the USS Cole in 2000. And they were so confident that we were so apathetic and so asleep that they came back and re-attacked the World Trade Center in 2001. The only difference between the attacks of between 1993 and 2001 is the buildings didn't come down in 2003. And the second time they were successful, killing almost 3,000 Americans on that day. Well, today we can no longer hide behind "we lack imagination." We know what's coming. We have never been faced with an enemy that tells us exactly how much they hate us, why they hate us, what they want to do to us, how they want to kill us, how many of us they want to kill. Remember, Al-Qaeda said they want to kill 2 million American children and 2 million adults. 4 million Americans in a terrorist attack. They are very specific. They issue press releases about it. They write articles about it. They record videos about it and send it to Al Jazeera to air worldwide. And we bury our head in the sand and pretend the problem is so little, itty-bitty problem. It's just a little handful of minority who have kind of twisted and hijacked Islam, and Islam has nothing to do with it. And under President Bush, he made sure he let us know that Islam is a religion of peace, and Al-Qaeda is only our problem. Do you think Al-Qaeda is our problem? When was the last time you heard Al-Qaeda mentioned in the evening news? Because right now it's ISIS. Right now it's Boko Haram. Right now it's Al-Shabaab. What we are realizing is what brings these radical Islamists together, because this is exactly what we are dealing with, radical Islam, is the ideology. It doesn't matter what name they go by, because it doesn't matter what color their skin is. It doesn't matter what language they speak from across the globe. So today when you hear the news on television, you hear about Lashkar-e-Taiba in India, Al-Shabaab in Somalia. I know we live in a big Somali community in here. Isn't that amazing? So there's a huge Somali community in here. So Al-Shabaab in Somalia, where a lot of Somalis from America went to fight with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and are now fighting with Al-Shabaab in Somalia. As a matter of fact, the first American suicide bomber who blew himself up was a Somali American who came to America as a refugee from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. The first American suicide bomber to blow himself up. So when you look at Al-Shabaab in Somalia, Lashkar-Taiba in India, Boko Haram in Nigeria, Ansar al-Sharia in Libya, ISIS in Iraq and Sham, Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun in Egypt, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon. These they don't even speak the same language. Do you realize that? We're talking about Africans, we're talking about people in the Gulf, we're talking about people in the Middle East, different colors. Boko Haram is black, Boko Haram in Nigeria is black, Lashkar-Taiba in India are brown skin, ISIS is white. I mean, it doesn't matter what color their skin is. What we are dealing with is the ideology. The only difference is ISIS established the caliphate, re-established the Islamic State. So in order for you to understand what is driving them, or what is this ideology that they keep talking about, I'm gonna crunch 1400 years of Islamic history into 5 minutes to you and make it as exciting as I can possibly make it. Because when I was a young girl, I hated history. But you know what they say? Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And we are watching history being repeated right before our own eyes. So you see, Prophet Muhammad got his revelation from the angel Gabriel, supposedly, that he is to be the last of the prophets in the early 600s. So he started preaching in his own city, Mecca. And he traveled trying to recruit people to believe that he is the last of the prophet. And he tried, and he tried, and he tried for 12 years and failed. Because nobody would listen to him. And after 12 years, the only people he can recruit is his immediate family and friends. So Prophet Muhammad decided, if I go to Medina, which is the Jewish business hub of Arabia at the time, if I go to Medina and preach to the Jews, and if they accept me, that will give me credibility in the eyes of my own people. But in order for Muhammad to sell his religion to the Jews, he had to make it more acceptable to the Jews. So Prophet Muhammad borrowed a lot from the Old Testament and incorporated it into his religion. This is why you see a lot of similarities between Judaism and Islam. For example, Jews pray a few times a day, Muslims pray a few times a day. Jews don't eat pigs, Muslims don't eat pigs. Jews fast for Yom Kippur, Muslims fast for Ramadan. Religious Jews wash their hands before meals, Muslims wash their hands before meals as a part of a ritual. So Muhammad packaged his religion and went to Medina and started preaching. And the Jews decided, well, no thank you, we like our religion, we're not about to switch. You know, you're an okay guy, we allowed you, to come to our city, so you're fine, but we want to remain Jews. That's when Prophet Muhammad turned against them. That's when Prophet Muhammad became a military warrior. That's when Islam went from being strictly a spiritual movement for 12 years into becoming a political movement cloaked in religion. So Prophet Muhammad kicked the Jews and Christians out of their homes, declared them as dhimmi, or second-class citizens. The only way they were allowed to stay alive if they do not want to become a Muslim is to pay the jizya, the protection tax, if they want to remain in their religion, if they did not want to convert. As a matter of fact, because they are the people of the book, the Christians and the Jews, they were the only one who were given the option that you either pay the jizya if you want to stay alive or you convert to Islam. All other people that Islam came across with, it was either two choices, convert or die. There was nothing in the middle. So Christians and Jews became second-class citizens, or dhimmi. Christians and Jews had to pay the jizya, the protection tax. They used to come together actually in a ceremony once a month downtown, where the Jew or the Christian would kneel on his knee and hand his goods to the Islamic mullah, and the mullah would take the goods and he would hand the Christian or the Jew a receipt to wear around their neck like a necklace to show that they bought their protection. Christians and Jews were not allowed to build churches, were not allowed to build temples. Jews were not allowed to blow the shofar. Christians were not allowed to ring the church bells. They were not allowed to pray publicly. They were not allowed to ride horses. They could only ride donkeys. As a matter of fact, they were given identifiable clothing. The yellow star, which many people think was a German invention, is actually an Islamic invention by the second Caliph in Iraq, who gave the Jews the yellow star to wear to identify them as they walked down the street. Caliph al-Mutawakkil, the second Caliph of Iran. The Christians were given the zunar, that belt that you all men are wearing around your pants. That's called the zunar in Arabic, and that's what was given to the Christians to wear around their waist to identify them. Basically, the Germans, because they worked with the Mufti of Jerusalem, learned how the Muslims defeated the Jews before, and the Mufti helped the Germans reinvent the yellow star and give it to the Jews. Islam continued to grow. They went all the way to Jerusalem. They conquered Jerusalem. By that time, by 1090, the Pope in Rome told the Christians in Europe, how come you sit on the sidelines watching what's happening to your brethren in the Holy Land? You've got to go liberate the Christians. That's why the Crusaders were launched in 1090. The Crusaders were not launched because it's a bunch of born-again Christians who woke up one morning and decided, you know, we're going to go butcher a bunch of people because we want to convert them to Christianity. The Crusaders were launched because they needed to liberate Jerusalem. And they went to Jerusalem and they were able to liberate it. And Jerusalem remained liberated for less than 100 years, when Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi Saladin took the city back, and Jerusalem remained under Islamic control until the year 1967, when the state of Israel liberated Jerusalem, and Jews, Christians, and Muslims could all pray under the same sky. The Crusaders continued trying to fight Islam. They tried to fight Islam for 300 years and finally failed and dissipated because they could not defeat Islam. Islam continued to grow. They went all the way into Spain. They conquered Spain, changed the name of Spain to Andalusia, went all the way into Central Europe, went into China, went into India. By the 1600s, Islam, the Caliphate, covered more of the earth's surface than the Roman Empire did at its peak. Between the 1600s and the 1800s, the Europeans were experiencing their European Revolution when they figured out how to make products on factory lines in mass where they can sell their products and make it quick money. And that's what gave the Europeans the money to be able to organize and build a military that was able to defeat the Muslims. And they were able to stop them. The Europeans were able to stop the Muslims at the gates of Vienna on 9/11. That's why Osama bin Laden chose that date. 9/11 is when Christendom stopped the Islamists at the gates of Vienna. That date is so symbolic in the Islamic calendar. That's when the Europeans started pushing them back. They pushed them out of Europe. They pushed them out of areas. They pushed them all the way to North Africa and the Middle East. And that's why you see the concentration of Islamists in North Africa and the Middle East. The Islamic State, or the Islamic Caliphate, ended in 1924 in Turkey by President Ataturk, who was a secularist, who gave women rights to vote, gave women rights to an education, forbid women to wear the hijab, forbid men to grow beards. The Islamists hated him. They called him a Jewish agent because they believed that Ataturk had a Jewish mother and it was her influence that made him end the Islamic Caliphate. By the time the Islamic Caliphate or the Islamic State ended in 1924, Islam was responsible for the murder of 270 million people across the globe, killed by the sword. 270 million. I want you to think about it, because there was no weapons of mass destruction back then. There was no biological weapons and nuclear weapons. To be responsible to kill 270 million people, 70 million Hindus out of these 270 million people. Because the Hindus were not the people of the book. They were only given two choices, either convert to Islam or die, and the Muslims butchered them. How many of you knew this history? Very, very few. You know why? Because we in America fail our children to teach them history. And we think most people do not know this history. Most people have no idea. Most people, you ask our teenagers today in high school, bright teenagers, tell me about World War II. They can't even tell you about World War II. For them, that's ancient history. And now we're looking at ISIS and we are wondering, oh my goodness, how can this group develop and this new group with this new idea? After what you just heard, do you think ISIS is a new group with a new idea? No! ISIS resurrected the caliphate, which ended less than 100 years ago. Less than 100 years ago, after ruling and existing for 1,400 years. That is important history. So 5 years later, after the Islamic State ended in 1924, in 1928, a group of Muslim mullahs in Egypt got together and they said, how can Christendom win over Islam? Islam is superior to all other religions. Muslims are superior to all other people. We've got to resurrect and bring back the caliphate. And a lot of scholars in the West during the 30s and the 40s and the 50s thought Islam is over. Islam will never be resurrected. It doesn't matter, it's finished. But two things happened in the Middle East that gave the Islamists the money and the power to organize and explode on the global scale. The number one thing that happened was the discovery of oil in Saudi Arabia, which we discovered and we allowed them to nationalize. That gave them the money to spread their radical ideology worldwide and start building mosques and madrasas worldwide in every country. And the number two thing that happened was Ayatollah Khomeini coming to power in Iran. That gave the Islamists the spiritual leadership, the spiritual covering. So now they have the money, they have the spiritual covering, and they exploded on the world stage in the 80s. That's when we started seeing the rise of terrorist activities. In 1982, the Muslim Brotherhood, who is now, by the way, has 70 offshoot Islamic organizations, including Al-Qaeda and Hamas and now ISIS, because al-Baghdadi, who is the head of ISIS, was in our prisons in 2011. Al-Baghdadi was one of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood. And al-Baghdadi, who started the Islamic State, resurrected it, who our president tells you the Islamic State is not really Islamic. Because our president knows about Islam more than al-Baghdadi and the Islamic State. He doesn't tell you that al-Baghdadi, the head of the Islamic State, has a PhD in Islamic theology from the University of Iraq, no less. But of course, what does he know about the Islamic State? Obama knows better. They're only a JV team, that's what we're going to call them, and we're going to stick our head in the sand, and that's it. So, the Muslim Brotherhood wrote a plan in 1982, a 100-year plan for radical Islam to infiltrate and dominate the West and establish an Islamic government on earth. In the counter-terrorism circles, this plan became known as the Project. What makes the project so unique is it gives tactics and proposals on how to infiltrate the West, how to use our laws against us, how to use our open-mindedness against us, how to use our multiculturalism, our diversity against us. As a matter of fact, they give them words that they use. They say, when you use those words, you'll have Westerners lapping like dogs out of your hand. And you want to guess what those words are? Dialogue, interfaith, tolerance, diversity, multiculturalism. Does that sound familiar? Sounds very familiar. They talk about how to set up non-profit organizations and human rights organizations and maintain the appearance of moderation in order to advance the radical Islamic agenda in the West. They talk about how to get democratically elected Muslims on all levels in the West, including government, NGOs, etc. They talk about how, and I just have to ask the gentleman with the light on the camera right there, thank you. Very distracting and dangerous. They talk about how to get democratically elected Muslims on all levels in the West, including government, so they can have an insider eye, bird's view, as to how policy is done on the highest level. They talk about how to work with like-minded, progressive organizations that share similar goals. This is why, when you see the ACLU, for example, working with CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, you scratch your back and you think to yourself, how can these two people work together? What do they have in common? But the ACLU is being used as the useful idiots at the hands of an Islamic organization with an agenda. So they wrote the plan and they began implementing it in Europe. Remember, they wrote it in 1982. And they began implementing it in Europe in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. And here we are. And as you can see, even before the refugee problem now, Europe has morphed into Eurabia. Europe is no longer the Europe that you used to go visit 20 years ago. Europe has changed into Eurabia. As I'm speaking to you right now, there are 85 Sharia courts operating in Britain alone, parallel to British courts. In France alone, there are 725 no-go zones where French police is even afraid to enter. And you wonder why the French are having the problem that they're having? Europe is changing right before our eyes. And what's happening in Europe is a preview as to what's coming to the United States. The plan worked in Europe, and they wrote the plan for the United States in 1991 for the destruction and demise of the United States. Here is the plan. The plan is titled مذكرة تفسيرية للهدف الاستراتيجي العام للجماعة في أمريكا الشمالية. You all got that? There will be a quiz, you know. The plan is titled an explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the group in North America, written 5/22/1991, 10 years prior to September 11th. This plan was admitted into evidence in the largest terrorism financing trial ever in the history of the United States, where our government sued the Holy Land Foundation and handed down 108 guilty verdicts for Muslim Americans and Muslim American organizations raising money in the United States to the tune of millions and sending it overseas to support terrorism. And they raised most of the money in a $160 increment, which is the price for a suicide belt for a suicide bomber. Now, how many of you have heard about this plan? Few. You would think this should be on broadcast media, ABC, NBC, and CBS, and the whole nation should have heard about it in great, pain, agonizing detail. But I'm going to read you one paragraph out of this plan that will show you exactly what they mean. Remember when I told you they don't mince words, they don't beat around the bush, they're very open, they don't have a hidden agenda? Now, here's a paragraph out of this plan that will give you a pretty good idea as to where they're going. The title of this paragraph is Understanding the Role of the Muslim Brother in North America. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process, which is a cultural jihad, with all the word means. The Ikhwan, which is the Arabic word for brothers, meaning the Muslim Brotherhood, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, meaning the Muslim Brotherhood, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. This is how clear they are. But what makes this plan very, very important, not only the details that they go into it, but what's so interesting about it is the last page. Because the last page lists 29 front Islamic organizations set up in America for the sole purpose of destroying and sabotaging America from within. And I'm going to read you some of their names. And you're going to be familiar with some of them. And as you can see, I'm not talking about ISIS right now. We're talking about the cultural war being waged against us peacefully from within. Number 1 on the list is ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America. If they sound familiar to you, it's because they are now advisors to President Obama about Middle East policy. The president of ISNA is the one who wrote President Obama's speech to the Arabic world. Remember the first infamous speech when he first became president? The president of ISNA wrote that speech for President Obama, which he delivered in Egypt. So we not only have the fox watching the hen house, we have the fox inside the White House talking policy in the ear of the president. Number 2 on the list is the MSA, the Muslim Student Association. The Muslim Student Association has more chapters on American college campuses than the Democrats and the Republicans combined. And you wonder how we're losing our universities? Number 8 on the list is NATE, the North American Islamic Trust, which owns the deed to over 90% of mosques in the United States. Number 22 on the list is IAP, Islamic Association for Palestine, which later became CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations. Now, how many of you are familiar with CARE? Raise your hand. Wow, look at that. Everybody knows who CARE is. Isn't that amazing? Why? You see them on television all the time. They're always on CNN, on Fox News, on Bill O'Reilly, on MSNBC, ABC. They are the Council on American Islamic Relations. Doesn't that sound so peaceful and multicultural and diverse and interfaith kind of thing? And so cool and hip and non-threatening? The Council on American Islamic Relations, which is nothing more than the front for the terror group Hamas in the United States, operating within to sabotage our country. Peacefully, mind you. In this plan, they focus on every segment of our society. They have an organization set up to match every segment of our society to destroy us. From media, from publishing, from public relations, from the Institute of Thoughts, from education, you name it. It is all set up, a system within a country, right here in the United States with supporting organizations. See, while everybody is talking about ISIS, nobody's paying attention to this. This trial for the Holy Land Foundation took place in Dallas, Texas in 2007 and 2008, before ISIS even existed. Yet most Americans have no idea about this. And by the way, as soon as President Obama became president, because most of these organizations that I read to you on this list are unindicted co-conspirators, including CARE, as soon as President Obama became president, the reason why they are unindicted co-conspirator is because Attorney General, his Attorney General, immediately put the kibosh and Eric Holder and stopped the police officers of the government from continuing the prosecution. He stopped it. And in 2009, President Obama stopped all investigation and trials of any Islamic charity in the United States. This trial was the last trial before President Obama took office. But at this point, I want to focus on education, because I believe that will give you an idea as to why we are where we are in our country today. Because education is how you change a society over 2 generations. It doesn't take much. So they started pumping. They said, okay, how are we going to start changing the society? So in the education department, which is one out of many other departments they're focusing on, they decided to start pumping millions into our universities, setting up Middle East study departments and political science departments, and appointing Arab professors who are anti-America, anti-Israel, to teach our children that America is bad, Israel is evil, and the Islamic world is the underdog and the oppressed. And to give you an idea of the Saudi peddling that has taken hold of our universities, let me share with you some numbers. The King of Saudi Arabia donated $20 million to the University of Arkansas. $22 million were donated to Harvard University from 2 Saudi sheikhs linked to Al-Qaeda. $28.1 million donated to Georgetown. $5 million to MIT, $1.5 million to Texas A&M, $5 million to Rutgers University, $5 million to Columbia University, which, by the way, Columbia, when confronted, tried to lie to conceal the source of the funds. Other recipients of Saudi-tainted monies include UC Santa Barbara, Johns Hopkins University, Duke University, American University, UCLA, Howard University, and many, 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 many others. You get the idea. From the Ivy League to the community colleges and everything in between, we pump the gas and they pump poison into the hearts and minds of our future generations. And that's why we must become energy independent tomorrow. People ask me all the time, Brigitte, why is the media so biased? I mean, my gosh, you can't even watch CNN, you cannot, and God forbid, if you're on a cruise ship and watching CNN International or the BBC, when you're stuck, you just want to take your shoe and throw it at the TV, because there's nothing good to say about America. It's like, what am I watching? Al Jazeera in English? But this is how bad, and I tell people, why are you surprised? Because all these students who have been graduating out of our universities for the last 20 years, who have been fed a steady diet of hate and resentment against America, are today the news anchors, the news reporters, the news writers, the newspaper publishers, the newspaper editors. They are the policy makers, the policy shapers, the foreign policy writers. I mean, just look at our president. We don't have a commander-in-chief. We have a coward and an apologizer-in-chief who never misses an opportunity to apologize. The strategy worked so well on college campuses that they decided, why wait until the kids get to college? Why don't we start with them in middle and high school? This way, by the time they get to college, we will have them in the palm of our hands, and they vote. So the Islam Project was launched in 1991, and they started providing consultants to America's top publishers of textbooks, history books, and social studies books for middle schools and high schools to teach them about Islam. One of the most notorious consultants, Susan Douglas, trained over 100,000 teachers across America on how to teach this course. They started introducing a course called the Course on Islam. The course is a 3-week course where students have to adopt Islam, adopt Islamic names, memorize and recite verses from the Quran, go to a mosque on a field day to experience what it's like to be a Muslim. And when I started talking about this, especially after I wrote my second book, They Must Be Stopped, which, by the way, will be here later on for sale tonight, and I hope all of you who are taking notes, you can stop taking notes now, because all this information will be available later. When they started teaching the course, it was mind-boggling what was in the course. When I started talking about it, after I wrote it, in my book, people would say to me, Brigitte, you're exaggerating. That couldn't possibly be happening. There's no way. I don't believe it. We have separation of church and state. I mean, can you imagine if a pastor walks in to teach a course about the Bible in public schools? Of course it will never happen. Well, yeah, that will never happen. But here is the course. I decided there was nothing like show and tell. And actually, I got this course from the Thomas More Law Center, who ended up suing the Byron School and the Excelsior School in Byron, California, where they presented this course as evidence against the school. So here's the school. Here's the course. This course was introduced in California schools in 1991. It's put on by a company called Interact Publishing, doing business as Interact. So the teacher, and I'm not going to bore you going through the whole course, I'm going to choose some things that I think it's important for you to know. The teacher starts the instruction of the course by saying, from the beginning, you and your classmates will become Muslims. You will be a member of a caravan. This is how the teacher is introducing the course to the student. The teacher continues, Dressing as a Muslim and trying to be involved will increase your learning and enjoyment. Finally, trying your best at all tasks will guarantee you an excellent grade and a more enjoyable time. So the teacher is already dangling the great carrot in front of the students so they can get their act together and participate and be excited about the course. Here are the Islamic names that the students can choose from. We have boys' names and girls' names. Now, here's the interesting part. This is a wisdom card. And the wisdom card is like a multiplication table card for the students who want to study with their multiplication tables. That helps, it's a cue card that helps students memorize their lesson. Well, this one is about the lesson of Islam. But this card in particular talks about jihad. Now, I chose this card in particular because, you know, when you hear the word jihad, you know that jihad means war against the infidel. Because obviously every time we hear the word jihad, it's either Islamic jihad, al-mujahidun, you know, everybody talks about jihad, the terrorists talk about jihad. They name their organizations Islamic jihad. Every terrorist who's about to blow himself up, they scream, I'm dying fi sabil al-jihad, Allahu Akbar, I'm dying in the path of Allah. Any suicide bomber that blows himself up, you know, especially at the Palestinian territories where they record their last will and testament, you know, they say why they're killing themselves. They say they're dying for the cause of jihad. Now, jihad is mentioned in the Quran 40 times. 36 times out of 40 as a holy war against the infidels to either kill them or subjugate them. But here's what our little Johnny and Sally are learning in public school about jihad. A jihad is a struggle by Muslims against oppression, invasion, and injustice. Now, if these words sound familiar to you, it's because every time Al-Qaeda issues a press release as to why they're fighting America, what did they used to say? We are fighting oppression. We are fighting injustice. We are fighting invasion. Anytime a Palestinian suicide bomber who records a video before he blows himself up, what does he say? I am dying because I am fighting oppression, I am fighting invasion, I'm fighting occupation, I'm fighting injustice. So what we have right now is our students in our public schools being fed our enemy's talking points by our enemy in our own country, paid for by our tax dollars to our children. And this started back in 1991, 10 years prior to September 11th. And this type of education has been going on now for over 20 years. So those students who were studying this in middle school are now in their 30s. And you wonder why the country is shifting, where they are losing respect to the military, where they're not so proud of our military. You know, you see how they're changing the mindset? Because these students now are thinking, well, of course they're blowing us up over there. Of course they want to kill our soldiers, but it's our fault. Because these poor Muslims who are oppressed and the underdog are killing our people who are so cocky, who invaded their land, and who are so oppressive. And all these poor people are fighting for injustice and against oppression and against occupation. You see what's happening in our public schools? You know, Hitler made a very important statement. Hitler said, give me the children and I will change society in 10 years. And he did. Now you understand why we have a socialist running for the President of the United States and having the traction that he has. Now you understand why we have a lying Hillary running for president who already botched our policy in the Middle East, who is Libya is a failure, Syria is a failure, Egypt is a failure, Lebanon is a failure, Yemen is a failure under her watch, lies straight about 4 Americans who died in Benghazi under her watch, and nobody has the power, and she's running for president of the United States. Shameful. Shameful. Now you understand why the new generation of Americans lack patriotism, why the new generation generation of Americans are brainwashed? Why the new generations of Americans are embarrassed of America, apologize for America? Well, you know what I say? We have, for anybody who hates America, for anybody who apologizes for America, for anybody who doesn't like America, we'll give them a one-way ticket to get the heck out of here. Everybody is walking on eggshells because everybody is afraid and sensitive, and we have safe rooms and all of that nonsense. We need to take political correctness and throw it in the garbage where it belongs. And you know what really offends me? You know how I get offended? I am sick and tired when I hear people say, I'm an African American, and I'm a Mexican American, and I'm a Vietnamese American, and I'm Italian American. I am nothing but an American. What made this nation great is people coming together from all over the world, seeking opportunity, coming here to become Americans. Immigrants who used to come to this nation, cross oceans, they used to come here. They wanted to make sure their kids spoke English because they wanted their kids to be Americans. They wanted to eat American food. They wanted to become a part of the American society. I am a legal immigrant to this great country. I crossed oceans to get here. Those type of immigrants like me, whether they came on the Mayflower or whether like me they came on the TWA, those are the immigrants we want in our country, not criminals breaking our laws. Time for apologizing for America is over. America is God's gift to the universe. I believe English is the official language of the United States, and shall remain so. I'm talking to the right people. I love you people, my people. Thank you, thank you. This is what makes America great. Now you understand why I am energized when I travel the country and meet people like you. Now I am here tonight not because I want to tell you the problems. We do have a problem in our country. How many of you recognize we have a problem in our country? We do. But I am here tonight to give you solutions. I know you came here tonight because you are interested in hearing what we can do to protect America. You are here tonight because either you know who I am, you either watched me on television, or somebody told you, oh my gosh, you've got to show up and listen to this opinionated lady. But we are here tonight to discuss solutions. You know, 9/11 was a defining moment for the United States. I'm hoping tonight would be a defining moment for each and every one of you in this hall tonight. On 9/11 changed our lives. We all did the same thing, no matter where we were. We all watched television. We all were glued to the TV sets, watching what's happening, watching images of the World Trade Center come down again and again and again. We all cried. We all felt helpless. We all felt brokenhearted. We all were depressed. We all were sad. We could not believe that somebody would hate us so much that they would commit such a heinous act of murder. We couldn't believe it. We knew. We felt helpless. We didn't know what to do. That day, my daughters came home from school. I have 2 daughters. And the youngest one was around my age when my house was blown up. And she was with me watching television and watching the images of the World Trade Center come down. And she looked at me and she said, "Mommy, why did they do this to us?" And I found myself looking into my daughter's eyes. and repeating to her exactly what my daddy said to me. They hate us because they consider us infidels and they want to kill us. Here we were, 2 generations apart, 2 continents apart. When I was her age, I was a young Lebanese girl who spoke Arabic. She's a young American girl who speaks English. 8,000 miles apart, 30 years apart, and I found myself repeating to my daughter everything my daddy said to me that day. That day was my defining moment. That day I vowed that I will do everything I can to make sure that my daughter will never ever have to look into her child's eyes and repeat to him or to her what my daddy told me and what I had to tell her. That day I was reborn as an activist. Thinking, what can I do for my country? Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. I started thinking and I decided I have found my purpose. That day, I found my destiny. I knew that with everything I had been through, as a Middle Easterner, as a survivor of war, as a news anchor, as somebody who comes from the media, I can be the lips and tongues and be the voice of millions of Americans who felt exactly like me, yet they were not able to speak the way I spoke, lest they be accused of being a racist and a bigot. And I decided, when I speak, what are they going to say? They better be able to argue with me in Arabic before they can accuse me of being a racist. So I decided I'm going to start an organization called ACT. And I'm going to start educating millions of uninformed Americans about the threat of radical Islam to world peace and our national security. And I started traveling and I started speaking. And for 6 years I traveled and I spoke and I traveled and I spoke. And I would speak to people, to groups as small as 8 people meeting at Frankie's Ribs at 7 a.m. in the morning. Home meets at Frankie's Ribs at 7 a.m. in the morning. And the average age was 80 and I would go give my presentation and every other word was, huh? Now you know why I am loud. Practice. And I would speak to groups as big as 10,000 people in a room in one of those mega churches. And one question kept coming up. Now that I'm educated, what can I do? Give me something to do. And I realized very quickly, we can educate until the cows come home. Education is important, but education by itself is not sufficient. Education must be coupled with action. And that's when in 2007, I launched ACT for America, our grassroots movement. And I'm proud to tell you that today, ACT for America has 300,000 members and 1,000 chapters nationwide. With a full-time government director on Capitol Hill, ACT for America helped pass 42 bills in 22 states in the last 6 years, all relating to national security. Some of the bills we're working on right now, ACT for America has 13 bills at play in different states. But some of the bills we are working on, one in particular that is now actually is introduced in Ohio in the state legislature, ALAC, American Laws for American Courts. The reason why we introduced American Laws for American Courts, it says that no foreign law that is not compatible with the United States Constitution would be allowed to be used in any American courtroom. That sounds good, right? Sounds good. Now people tell me, why do we need such a law, Brigitte? I mean, of course we have the Constitution. Why on earth do we need such a law? You know, Sharia law would never come to America. That's only in Europe. Well, how would you like to know that we have documented over 143 cases where Sharia law was used in an American courtroom instead of the Constitution of the United States? In 22 states. So we introduced ALAC, American Laws for American Courts. We passed it already in 12 states. Hopefully Ohio would be the 13th. Because what's happening is with the rise of Islamic immigrations into your state and many states across the country, when Muslims are getting into a fight or whatever, they're going to court and they're telling the judge, well, I'm a Somali Muslim, I want to be judged under Somali law. Or I want to be judged under Indonesian law. Or I want to be judged under Pakistani law. And what are these laws? They're all Sharia law. That's how they're getting away with it. Well, we want to say, if you live in America, and you're going to abide by our rules and our laws, and if your law is not compatible with ours, maybe you shouldn't agree to it. We helped pass it in 12 states already. We want Ohio to be the 13th. Another bill we're working on, freedom of speech bill. As you know, that freedom of speech has become under attack. One of our first bills we worked on back in 2009, 2010 was the free speech bill, because we want to make sure that authors and publishers are protected when they write things criticizing Islam. We want to make sure we're not sued to be able to speak the truth. We want to make sure that passes in Ohio. We want to make sure that will be introduced in Ohio as well. Another thing ACT is working on, we're not only tackling the legislative part, because here's why we started focusing on legislation on the state level. Because we knew that under Obama, we're not going to be able to introduce bills. It's going to be very difficult passing anything related to this issue under Obama and DC. So we decided, if you start passing bills on a state level, if you pass a bill in 16 to 20 states, then you set precedent. Then you can introduce it on Capitol Hill, and then obviously you'll be able to find the sponsor and co-sponsors, because obviously the bill is not so controversial, because if it passed in 16 to 20 states, it's got support. And that was our strategy as to why we started passing bills on the state level. Another thing we tackled on the education. I read to you what they are doing with the education system all over the country. ACT for America launched a textbook project. We launched a project between 2008 and 2010. We hired researchers to research 38 top books in America, social studies books and history books, put out by America's top publishers, and find all the mistruth, all the lies, all the deception, all the watering down about the Islamic operation within our country, or Islam as a religion, and many other things, the way they're teaching patriotism as well. And we issued a report about it, and we mailed the report. The report was titled Education or Indoctrination, the Treatment of Islam in 6 through 12 American Textbooks. This is the executive summary. We mailed the executive summary to 70,000 elected school board members nationwide, saying, what are you going to do about this? Because we owe our children the truth. And if the elected school board members are not going to get with the program and make sure that we elect them to teach our children the truth, if they're not going to do that, we're going to throw their behinds out and let somebody else in their place. And I'm proud to tell you that in Texas, this past year, we were able to get before the State Board of Education and testify. And because of the work of our chapter leaders in Texas, the state of Texas, the publishers would not reissue the books for the school year of 2015-2016 now without the approval of ACT for America. Do you think this would have been possible without an ACT for America organization? No. It takes an organized resistance to bring about change. Now, people tell me all the time, my gosh, Brigitte, we need millions to be able to put a dent. No, you don't. You need the dedicated few. And I hope tonight I'm talking to the dedicated few. You know, 2% of the passionate will always overrule over 98% of the indifferent. Always remember that. 2% of the passionate will always overrule over 98% of the indifferent. I hope tonight I am talking to the 2% of the passionate. So I'm here tonight because I want you all involved and aware of what's happening in our country. Now you are aware of what's happening in our country. Now we want you involved. We want to be able to reach you. We want you sign up to get our emails so we can reach you when there's a bill coming down for a vote. When the bill comes down in Ohio for a vote, we want to be able to send an email to every single one of you here in this building today, so you can call your elected official and tell them, pass this bill. We want to make sure we build the firewalls in Ohio. How many of you agree with me? Does this message resonate with you? Raise your hand. Good, good. Now here's how we're going to do this. Under your seat, there are 2 sheets of paper. 2 sheets of paper under your seat. Sheet number 1 says action card. Those of you who are not getting our emails, we need you signed up to get our action alerts so we can reach you about bills, not only in your state, but bills on the federal level as well. And also important information. Receive a free ACT email. We want you all to check that box. Receive a free Act for America email. It doesn't cost you anything to be on our emailing list. And when you check that box, please fill in your email address and please print legibly. If you need a pen, raise your hand, borrow a pen from your neighbor. If you can't find a pen, prick your finger, write it with blood. I don't care as long as you do it. This is Grassroots 101. 101. Grassroots 101. I love this country. Okay, receive free Act for America email. Anybody who needs a pen, we have people here with pens that can give you a pen. Raise your hand. Fill in your email address, your phone number, and your name, address, city, state, etc. Now, if you want to join the chapter, we have amazing chapters in your community. We have Aina here. Aina, stand up. Aina is our chapter leader right here in Cincinnati. Now, all of you who want to join the chapter, you need to talk to Aina at the end. I'm going to make sure she's standing next to you when I'm signing books, so she can tell you all about her chapter. We want to grow the chapters because we want the chapters to work in the community together, to map the community, to get to know their elected officials, talk to their neighbors. You can be aware of information that we will send you from headquarters that we may not want to share via emails and we want to share through our chapters. Our chapters are the backbone of Act for America. This is what makes Act for America an amazing organization. This is how we have become the NRA of national security. So if you want to join the chapter, please check that box. At this point, we're not starting any new chapters because we are drowning with growth. And until we catch up with growth, you're just going to have to join the chapter in your local community. And if you are here from anywhere outside of Middletown, please make sure you talk to one of our chapter leaders. Talk to Dan. Dan, stand up so they can remember who you are. And if you want to join any chapter anywhere in the state of Ohio, you talk to Dan. He will be able to connect you with all the chapter leaders in different localities. Now, once you're done, if you want to host a fundraiser, by all means, I have to mention that. I don't know why they put that in there. But if you want to host a fundraiser, by all means, talk to us at the end. We can definitely use your help. Now, if you're done filling this paper, your email address, etc., please raise it up in the air. Our volunteers will walk down the aisle and pick it up from you. If you're done signing up to get our emails, filling in your information, make sure you fill in the entire paper. Please raise it up and our volunteers will come and pick it up from you. This is wonderful. This is how we are organizing state by state. This is how we are passing bills state by state. This is how Act for America was able to pass 42 bills in 22 states. Doing things exactly like this for the last 6-7 years, traveling from city to city, state to state, holding meetings like this, getting people's emails and addresses and getting them involved, so when we have a bill introduced in a state, we can email them, email you, and this is how Act for America has been able to pass bills. We have people up on the second level, raising their hands as well. So our volunteers, if we can have somebody up there, great. Great. Fantastic. Now, if you're done with this paper and you're passing it to the middle aisles, we're going to go to the next paper. What does an organization need other than volunteers and chapter members? Money. Thank you. I'm talking to the right people. Money. You know, when I started this organization, I was too embarrassed to ask about money. I didn't know, asking for money is very uncomfortable. But let me share with you how I started this organization. I started this organization out of my guest bedroom on the second floor. That was ACT headquarters. I called it Suite 201, meaning second level, first room on the right. ACT for America. And I learned how to send emails, and I canceled our health insurance between 2002 and 2004. So I can put gas in my car and travel all over the state of Virginia giving presentations just like this to educate the public. We canceled our health insurance for a family of 4 because I didn't know how to ask for money and I needed to fund my work. And when that was done, the organization started growing. I liquidated my 2 daughters' college fund. Every dime I saved for their college tuition, I liquidated it because I figured God will provide. I know this is what I'm supposed to do. By the time my kids went to college, they actually went to community college because I had spent all their college fund. And they ended up going to college for 2 years to the community college and then transferred to a regular university and went to university there. This is how I built Act for America. And then I realized I need to ask for patriots to support me, because if I am that dedicated to this cause, I know there are great patriotic Americans who would be willing to support and who don't have to cancel their health insurance and who don't have to use their kids' college education fund. But all we're asking tonight is for your generous support. As you can see, we did not charge anything for anybody to come into this room. We wanted it to be open and free and open to the public. And I want you to know that I'm not charging an honorarium. The church did not pay me a dime to be here. As a matter of fact, I am here with 3 of my top executives. We paid for our flight, we paid for our hotel room, we paid for our rental car, we paid for our meals. We are here completely out of our pocket, the pocket of Act for America. This is our investment in your community to mobilize the community and mobilize the nation. And this is the way we raise funds for the organization. And we hope that out of meetings like this, we will be able to recoup our travel expenses and have a little money left in the pocket to be able to use on projects like we do, like the textbook projects, like the investigative reporting that we do. And that's why I appeal to your generosity today. On the second page, for your donations, it says, yes, Brigitte, I stand with you in defense of our security, our freedoms, and our values. I hope that tonight you would want to stand with me in defense of our security, our freedom, and our American values. We are asking for you to pledge tonight either $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, and if you can write a few extra thousands at the end, by all means, don't let me stop you. You know, I used to say that. I made a joke about that one time. I was speaking in Colorado, and Mr. Coors himself from Coors Beer somebody dragged him to my presentation like 15 minutes before the presentation. He was literally at Carvel Ice Cream buying ice cream, and a friend of his says, hey, I'm on my way to you, Brigitte Gabriel, you've got to come. Mr. Coors walked up and handed me a $5,000 check, and since then, been a great supporter. So that's why I learned to ask. But tonight, if you make a donation of any amount, 25, 50, 100, 500, 250, as a thank you from us to you, we are going to give you, as a thank you, a dining discount card matching you dollar for dollar. If you donate $25, we're going to give you a $25 dining discount card that you can use when you're dining out to save money. So basically, we're going to give you back in savings the exact same amount you're giving Act for America. So you can save money when you go out and dine. You give us $250, we're going to give you $250 dining savings cards. Now, this dining savings card is a card where if you go to Subway, for example, and a regular, 6-foot sub or whatever they call it, the 12 whatever inch sub, is $7. You will pay $4 and $3 that you will save. That's the $3 part of your dining savings cards that will come to Act for America. So when you go out and dine, we have 70,000 restaurants participating nationwide. I'm not sure what restaurants are participating in your community. You'll get a card on the card. You'll be able to go on the internet and find out all the restaurants in your community. Generally nationwide, we have Macaroni Grill, Chili's, McDonald's, whether you want fine dining, whether you want fast food, Subways, Carvel Ice Cream, sometimes even grocery stores give 10% off when you spend $100 on groceries at your local grocery store. So different areas have different things. I do not know exactly what we have in your area. But if you donate tonight, we will match you dollar for dollar as a thank you gift for your donation. So next time you dine with purpose, knowing that while you are out eating and spending money on something you're going to spend anyway, a portion of your money is coming to support Act for America. And for that, we would be so grateful. We learned how to be very creative in raising money because our enemy is raising money in gold bars with oil pumping into their pockets from the Middle East. We don't have that. And that's why we have to depend on the generosity of each and every one of us. And this is why we need your financial support. Right now, we're raising money to hire 2 positions. We need another lobbyist, another state lobbyist working in our office, helping us pass bills nationwide. Do you know how many lobbyists the Saudis have on Capitol Hill? Take a guess. Well, over 100 lobbyists. You know how many lobbyists we have? What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this picture? You're going to tell me we as Americans, we cannot shave spare change every day to invest in protecting our country? They have Saudi oil, we have you. America has us. That's how we're going to do it. So please, for those of you who are moved tonight and who want to stand with us financially, please fill this card. We want to hire a lobbyist and we want to hire a communications director. And this is what we are raising the money for right now. Enter all your full name and all your information. Make sure you enter it legibly. We will carry this credit card on our body back to our headquarters. This will not be shipped, mailed. It will be hand carried. It will be entered into our database and shredded. No one will have access to your financial information but 2 people in our office before everything is shredded. Your information is safe with me like I will have my information safe. We need your financial support, and I am so grateful for those of you who will pledge to support us tonight. Now this paper, make sure you fill it up. Don't hand it to anybody. You're going to take this paper with you, and when you walk outside at the end, you're going to hand it to the tables. There will be signs and instructions, so you can get your free dining gift. You're pointing? Oh yeah. Oh, we're signing books in here. Okay. So whatever you're handing these papers to, are they handing it outside? Are they going outside to get their dining cards? Well, okay, this is fantastic, right here. Just keep it with you and hand it to the tables. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here with you today. And for those of you who stand with us and support us, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to dedicate my life to be able to do this full time, to be able to travel the nation, to be able to go from city to city to do this. Last night we were in Columbus. Tonight we are here. Tomorrow we are in Cleveland. Last week I was in Florida. Next week I'm going to Washington, D.C. for 3 days. The week after that I'm coming back to Cleveland. The week after that I go to California. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do these meetings nationwide. So with your effort and your generosity, we can educate other people in different areas of the country to do exactly the same thing. And I cannot end my presentation tonight without asking all our veterans and military personnel to please stand up and be recognized and remain stand up again, our veterans and our military personnel, I have a message for you. I want you to please stand up and save the applause till the end. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for building a nation for me where I can come and be all I can be as an American. I want to thank you for every meal you missed. I want to thank you for every holiday you missed. I want to thank you for my freedoms, because I know my freedoms are built upon your shoulders and your sacrifice. My freedom of speech, my freedom of religion, and every other freedom I have. Without your sacrifice, I wouldn't be able to enjoy the life I enjoy. I want to thank you for every meal you missed, for every holiday you missed, for every night you went to sleep without dinner, for every night you slept in a ditch, for every night you slept in wet feet and wet uniform serving our nation so we can enjoy our barbecues and our holidays. You are not only my heroes, you are the heroes of millions of Americans who feel the same way I do, but are not fortunate enough to stand before you here today. On their behalf, I thank you. I thank you on behalf of millions of people around the world who are still living under tyranny, who look up to you, who wish they had a military like you, and they will never have an opportunity to tell you thank you. On their behalf, I thank you. And I vow to you that I am building an organization with Act for America that will always praise you, that will always support you, that will always shout from the roof